I remember the exact moment I realized something was off. It wasn't during a big purchase. It wasn't after checking my bank balance. It was a random Tuesday night, standing in my kitchen, eating dinner straight from the container because I didn't feel like plating it. I had a better apartment than I used to. Nicer furniture. A fridge full of food I'd chosen, not whatever was cheapest. And still, I remember thinking, is this it? Not in a dramatic way. More like a soft confusion. Because on paper, my life had improved. My income was higher. My expenses were higher too, but that was expected. That's what growth looks like, right? Except, I didn't feel more satisfied. I felt oddly the same. Sometimes even more tired. That was the first time I brushed up against something people later told me was lifestyle inflation. But at the time, it didn't feel like a financial concept. It felt personal. Like I was missing something obvious about how money was supposed to work. Most lifestyle inflation stories are told like cautionary tales. You get a raise. You buy a nicer car. You move into a bigger place. Suddenly you're broke again. But that version misses the part that actually hurts. The real problem isn't that spending goes up. It's that satisfaction doesn't. Your life becomes more expensive. Without becoming more meaningful. And the scariest part is how quietly it happens. Think about your last pay increase. Not the fantasy version where everything changes overnight. The real one. Maybe it was a few hundred more per month. Enough to notice, not enough to celebrate wildly. At first, nothing changes. You feel a little lighter. Less pressure when bills hit. Then small things start to slide. You stop checking prices as closely at the grocery store. You upgrade a subscription. You choose convenience more often because, finally, you can. None of it feels reckless. In fact, it feels earned. You worked harder. You advanced. Why shouldn't your life reflect that? And that's where lifestyle inflation usually sneaks in. Not through extravagance. Through normalization. Here's the psychological trick our brains play on us. We adapt. Fast. The first time you experience something better, it feels amazing. The nicer seat. The faster phone. The apartment with natural light. But very quickly, that upgrade stops feeling like a treat and starts feeling like the baseline. What once felt special becomes invisible. And once it's invisible, losing it feels painful. So instead of asking, does this actually make my life better? We quietly switch to, I can't go back now. That's not indulgence. That's human wiring. I think back to a friend of mine who got a big promotion in her late 20s. She didn't change her life dramatically. She didn't buy luxury brands or take lavish trips. She just improved everything slightly. A bit better apartment. A bit better takeout. A bit more spontaneous spending. 6 months later, we were talking, and she said something that stuck with me. I make more money than I ever thought I would. And I still feel like I'm managing stress, not enjoying life. Nothing had gone wrong. And that was the problem. Lifestyle inflation doesn't feel like excess. It feels like maintenance. Your spending rises, but it doesn't rise toward joy. It rises toward comfort. Toward frictionless living. You're not buying happiness. You're buying the absence of inconvenience. And the absence of inconvenience is fine. Useful. Sometimes necessary. But it doesn't compound. Here's where things get subtle. When income goes up, we often assume satisfaction should go up with it. So when it doesn't, we look for the next upgrade. Better tools. Better experiences. Better environments. But satisfaction doesn't work linearly. Once your basic needs and a certain level of comfort are met, additional spending delivers diminishing emotional returns. The first time you stop worrying about rent is huge. The first time you don't panic over an unexpected expense is life-changing. But the jump from comfortable to slightly more comfortable is emotionally quiet. It costs money. But it doesn't feel like much. And yet, that quiet upgrade becomes permanent. Your fixed costs rise. Your expectations rise. Your tolerance for friction drops. Suddenly, what used to be an occasional treat becomes just how things are. And now your higher income isn't buying freedom. It's servicing a more expensive version of normal. I want to be careful here. This isn't about guilt. It's not about frugality as virtue. There's nothing wrong with wanting a better life. The issue is mistaking cost for improvement. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine two people who both get a $1,000 monthly raise. Person A uses it to upgrade their apartment. Better location. More space. Higher rent. Person B keeps their place and uses the money to reduce work hours, build savings, or create margin. From the outside, Person A looks like they leveled up. From the inside, 6 months later, they might feel the same. Same stress. Same schedule. Same tiredness. Just nicer walls. Lifestyle inflation is sneaky because it feels like progress. Your life looks better. Your spending looks justified. Your decisions make sense in isolation. But when you zoom out, satisfaction hasn't moved. It's like walking up an escalator that's going down at the same speed. You're working. You're moving. But you're not actually getting higher. What makes this especially tricky is that money conversations rarely include emotional return on investment. We track dollars carefully. We rarely track peace, time, or mental bandwidth. So we keep optimizing for what's measurable, while the things that actually make life feel better stay abstract. There was a point where I caught myself doing this in real time. I was about to increase a recurring expense. It wasn't huge. Barely noticeable monthly. And I remember thinking, this won't change anything, but not having it would feel annoying. That sentence scared me. Because it meant I wasn't buying improvement. I was buying avoidance. Avoidance of mild discomfort. Avoidance of thinking. Avoidance of small friction. And those purchases add up fast. Lifestyle inflation rarely shows up as regret. It shows up as numbness. You don't think, I shouldn't have done this. You think, why doesn't this feel better? And because nothing is obviously wrong, you assume the solution is more. More income. More upgrades. More spending. The cycle continues. There's also a social layer to this that doesn't get talked about enough. As your income rises, your reference group shifts. You start comparing yourself to people slightly above you, not below. Their normal becomes your aspirational. And because you're responsible, reasonable, and self-aware, you don't chase extremes. You chase averages, which quietly rise. This is how lifestyle inflation happens without lifestyle improvement. Not because people are careless, but because they're adapting. Because comfort becomes invisible. Because expectations reset faster than gratitude. The turning point for me wasn't a budget spreadsheet. It wasn't a dramatic financial mistake. It was realizing that money was solving fewer emotional problems than I expected it to. It made life easier. But not richer. And those aren't the same thing. Once you notice that, your relationship with spending shifts a little. Not toward restriction. Toward curiosity. You start asking softer questions. Does this reduce stress, or just distract me from it? Is this making my days better, or just my environment nicer? If this disappeared, what would I actually miss? Those questions don't always have clear answers. And that's okay. The point isn't to optimize perfectly. It's to notice patterns. One of the most helpful reframes I've found is this. Not all spending is equal, even if the price is the same. Some expenses fade into the background almost immediately. Others quietly support your life every day. The danger is letting background expenses multiply while telling yourself you're upgrading. People often think the solution to lifestyle inflation is discipline. But discipline alone just creates tension. The real shift happens when you start valuing margin more than upgrades. Margin in time. Margin in energy. Margin in choice. Those things rarely show up as line items. But they're what money is actually good at protecting. So instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" a better question might be, "What am I giving up emotionally by making this permanent?" Because every recurring cost isn't just a financial decision. It's a commitment to a certain level of income, a certain pace of work, a certain tolerance for stress. That trade-off is rarely obvious at the moment you swipe your card. Quiet power move isn't keeping your lifestyle artificially small. It's letting improvements earn their place. Not everything needs to scale with income. Some things can stay simple. And that simplicity becomes a source of stability, not deprivation. What's interesting is that people who resist lifestyle inflation the most aren't usually the most frugal. They're the most intentional. They're clear on what actually improves their life. And surprisingly indifferent to the rest. If you're listening to this and feeling a little uncomfortable, that's normal. This isn't about fixing anything overnight. It's about noticing where your money stopped feeling like a tool and started feeling like maintenance. That awareness alone changes how future decisions land. And here's the reassuring part. You don't need to undo your life. You don't need to optimize every dollar. Lifestyle inflation isn't a moral failure. It's a default path. Once you see it, you naturally start making quieter, more aligned choices. Not because you're forcing yourself to, but because you want your life to feel better, not just look better. Money is incredibly good at removing obstacles. It's less reliable at creating meaning. When spending rises faster than satisfaction, it's usually because we're asking money to do a job it was never designed to do. So if you've ever wondered why earning more didn't feel like the upgrade you expected, you're not broken. You're not ungrateful. You're human. And noticing that gap is often the first real step toward closing it. Not with less money, but with more awareness. That's where things actually start to change.